Started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Society of Women Engineers panel with the Baswell Society. My name is Christy Peters, and I am the Alumni Affairs Specialist for UAB School of Engineering. Thank you for joining us this evening. First, we would like to take care of a few housekeeping items. If you are not muted, please do so now. At any time during the presentation, you'll have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's presenters in the chat. To do so, just type your question into the Q&A at the bottom on the control panel. You'll see it looks like a little bubble that says chat. I will be monitoring our chat and keep a list for our panelists at the end. As time allows, the presenters will address as many questions as they can during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We will be recording this webinar and we'll share the link after the event. Without further ado, I'd like to now introduce our moderator, Society of Women Engineering President Emma Schmidt, and she will introduce our panelists for this evening. Emma Schmidt is a current senior in biomedical engineering at UAB. She has been an active participant in the Society of Women Engineers ever since she stepped on campus as a freshman. SWE has always been a great community of supportive girls and a wealth of opportunity for Emma while she has been at UAB. Throughout her undergraduate career, she has completed materials engineering research with the School of Engineering and currently works under Dr. Lee Marotti at EITD as an intern. After graduation, she will continue working under Dr. Marotti and make a home in Birmingham. Emma, I now hand it off to you for our panel presentation.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Society of Women Engineers Baswell Society event. I would like to introduce you to our panelists for tonight. Each one of these ladies is a member of the Baswell Society. Christy Peters will provide information on how to join in the chat at the end of our presentation. The Baswell Society began as a way to honor Imogene Baswell, the first female graduate from the engineering program. They have since endowed a scholarship in her honor. If you are interested in contributing to the scholarship, joining the Baswell Society, or both, please email Christy Peters at cnroach@uab.edu. I'm going to put that email in the chat real quick. And she'll get in touch with you or get you in touch with Robert Blakely. Our first panelist is Dr. Viola Akoff. She's the Associate Dean for Undergraduate and Graduate Programs and Professor of Metallurgical and Materials Engineering in the College of Engineering at University of Alabama. She has been awarded more than $13 million in externally funded research grants, including a National Society Foundation Career Award. She has over 25 years of experience in diversity and inclusion efforts with a focus on increasing the number of STEM degrees awarded to students from groups of that are underrepresented in the STEM field. In 2015, Dr. Akoff was selected to lead the Alabama Lewis Stokes Alliance for Minority Participation Program, LSAMP. Alabama LSAMP is a statewide effort which is funded by a $6 million grant from the National Science Foundation. She has also provided extensive research to 82 of the nation's 101 historically Black colleges and universities. For her work in diversity and inclusion efforts, both locally and nationally, Dr. Akoff was named the inaugural recipient of the Ellen Swallow Richards Diversity Award at a ceremony which was held in the National Academy of Sciences in Washington, D.C. The award is named in honor of the first woman graduate from MIT. Dr. Akoff has published over 80 peer-reviewed papers, co-authored 3 books, co-edited 3 books, and given over 100 invited and contributed talks on her research on every continent except Antarctica. Dr. Akoff is a full professor of metallurgical engineering and has been on the faculty of the University of Alabama since 1994. Her areas of expertise are in additive manufacturing, welding metallurgy, physical metallurgy, high-temperature alloys, and materials characterization using electron microscopy. Dr. Akoff is a graduate of UAB, where she received her bachelor's, master's, and PhD in materials engineering. Next, we have Jeannie Otts. Jeannie Otts began her engineering education at the University of South Alabama in Mobile, and soon after started a co-op program with Alabama Power at the Berry Steam Plant. In 1986, she moved to Birmingham and continued engineering school at UAB in electrical engineering, now known as electrical computer science engineering. Jeannie continued to co-op at Alabama Power in the distribution department. After some time, she went to work full-time in the distribution department and finished her education at UAB, taking 2 courses each quarter in the evenings. Jean's supervisor at Alabama Power assigned her a senior design project looking at the resulting step and touch potentials on failed underground cable. After graduating, Jeannie continued to work in distribution both at corporate level and in district offices until moving to the Transmission Control Center. In the late 90s, she moved to Southern Company Services into bulk power operations, where she worked as a control center operator and then data integrity engineer, where she worked for the rest of her career. Jeannie said she had many wonderful work experiences, both at Alabama Power and Distribution, and then at Southern Company Services, SoCo, in transmission. Throughout her career, she was active in the Society of Women Engineers, SWE, Engineering Council of Birmingham, ECOB, and the UAB School of Engineering, SOE. Jeannie has served in numerous officer positions for SWE Birmingham. During her tenure as president, SWE Birmingham started awarding scholarships to collegiate members studying engineering at accredited engineering schools in Alabama. Several years ago, Jeannie helped get the SWE UAB section active again. She believes in being one of the founding members of the Imogen Basel Society to endow scholarship with such a privilege. Jeannie said great things can happen when we work together with such great people. In 2015, she retired from SoCo, but remained active in SWE, ECOB, and UAB SOE. Currently, she's leading a team to renovate the ECOB website and make it support the good work of the organization. Our last panelist is our SWE advisor, our UAB SWE advisor, Dr. Mary Catherine Sewell-Lofton. Dr. M.K. Sewell-Lofton joined the UAB Department of Biomedical Engineering in January of 2020. She was born and raised in Birmingham and is excited to return home to be part of the UAB community. She received her bachelor's and master's degrees in chemical engineering from the University of Alabama. In 2014, she completed her PhD in biomedical engineering at Vanderbilt University, where her work was focused on developing biomaterials to study embryonic heart valve formation. Afterwards, Dr. Sewell-Lofton moved to St. Louis, Missouri, and worked as a postdoctoral researcher at both the Department of Biomedical Engineering at Washington University in St. Louis and in the Internal Medicine Department of the School of Medicine. While there, she was awarded the Pathway to Independence Award from the National Cancer Institute on her project to investigate how biomechanical forces regulate tumor progression and enteogenesis. She continues to work in her lab at the Wallace Tumor Institute here at UAB as a member of the O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center. In her spare time, she enjoys Broadway musicals, singing a cappella performance groups. She resides in Mountain Brook with her husband, Christopher, and her cat, Leopold. Okay, now with the introductions out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and launch into some questions that we have come up with to start off the panel. Remember, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask in the Q&A session, go ahead and put them in the chat, and Ms. Christy Peters will save them and ask them in the Q&A at the end. All right, so first question for our panelists. Explain the Baswell Society for our audience and why you decided to join. This could be for Dr. Akoff, Dr. Sewell-Lofton, Jeannie.
I guess I'll start. I see Jeannie like she was trying to say something, but like she was still muted there. I've been a graduate of UAB and always during my career, I've been a proponent for women in engineering. And I forgot to put on my bio, I was actually the president of the SWE chapter at UAB when I was a student there. And so I knew how important it was as a student, being a female student in a still male-dominated field, that having support is very important. And so I wanted to be a part of doing whatever I can to increase the number of women who actually pursued engineering. So that motivated me and to do this, and naming it after the first female graduate from the School of Engineering at UAB was very appropriate and right. It helps to I guess identify our focus and our purpose for this scholarship. So that's the way that's how I feel about it, and that's what the society means to me.
Wonderful. Do either of our other panelists want to add in, or should I go ahead and move on to the next question?
Well, I joined for exactly the same reasons I did. I love to see women step up and do engineering.
All right, wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second question. What do you hope endowing a scholarship such as the Baswell Society will do for women in engineering?
Well, I think part of that was answered in my first response, but I think what it do, because it will help release some of the financial stress. As you know, being an engineering student, I remember, it's a very difficult curriculum. And so worry about the curriculum and doing well in classes, and then also worried about finances. So that's even added worries for you. So having been a student myself and knowing how important having scholarships helped me, particularly me coming from a large family, it relieved the pressures of having to worry about finances. Because when I started UAB, actually, gosh, 6 of my siblings and we all received at least 1 degree from UAB. So when I started there, I had 2 older siblings at UAB. So it really relieved that extra burden for finances, which every college student has. So if you can relieve part of the burden, I think that's a long way to go.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to our third question. From your point of view or that of research, what do you believe inspires women to become engineers? What inspired you to become an engineer?
I like math, and that's what inspired me.
I guess it's similar with me. I like math and I also liked science, but I liked them. I didn't like math just by itself, and I didn't like science just by itself. So to me, engineering was the perfect merge between the two. And particularly in the field that I chose, materials engineering, it really put a great combination of my love for chemistry, solving things, and math together. So that was inspired me to do that. And then I also had older sisters who majored in engineering at UAB by the time I was 10 years old when my first sister went to UAB.
Dr. Sue Lofton?
I do want to give a little disclaimer that I'm not officially a member of the Imaging Baswell Society yet. I hope to be there one day. I've only been at UAB for 13 months now, so I'm still kind of getting my feet on the ground. But yeah, I actually really liked chemistry a lot, but I didn't want to be a chemist. So I wound up in chemical engineering, and I thought that was really cool, but I wanted to do more biomedical research. So that's kind of how I moved into biomedical engineering research. And I think one of the biggest things that helped me stay in engineering was actually being a part of SWE and seeing people like Dr. Beth Todd, who was the SWE advisor when I was there and is still the SWE advisor. And I even had Viola was one of my teachers when I was at UA. Seeing very successful, very intelligent women practicing engineering and being engineering professors really helped me kind of keep the course and motivate me.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our fourth question. Can you share with the audience your perspective on the outlook and demand for technology and engineering careers when this particular group of women enter the workforce, our members who are currently either attending the meeting or undergraduates?
Well, I guess I can answer that question. I was just working on a project where I had to get some data for women in the field of engineering. Currently, women make up 13% of the field in industry, but women make up 24% of the engineering enrollment across the nation. And one of the things that we can do to, I guess, engineering does not have the identity with most people think about what can they do to help others. I saw the question in the chat where they mentioned that some STEM fields, and particularly biology, are female dominated. And that's because there's an easier connection as to how you can help people. And so studies have shown that women tend to go towards fields where they can help people. And so engineering, I guess, needs to do a little bit better branding to say, the fact that we're on this technology right now, engineers made that possible. The cars and just everything that we have for technology and such, for environmental reasons and such. So women tend to go to those fields, and the biomedical engineering, environmental engineering, and chemical engineering, those tend to have higher numbers, higher than that 24% of women, because it's a more obvious connection as to how women can help society with those disciplines.
Wonderful, thank you. That kind of answers the next question. So I'm going to go ahead and skip one of them that we had. Let's see. Can you share one of your success stories in reaching your goals and rewarding moments that you experienced? What milestones were deemed imperative or mentioned as contributing factors for your success? So I guess for all three of ours, all three of you are still on mute. Do you guys have any specific moments that stood out as milestones in your career?
Yeah, I was trying to wait for someone else going next. Being a professor, you love to talk. So I'm trying not to dominate the time. So I was trying to see if Jeannie or MK has something to add first before I add my comments.
Go ahead.
Sure. So this kind of ties back into one of the previous questions and comments, in that while BME and chemical engineering and environmental do have more female undergraduate students, the further you kind of go in the academic track, the fewer females there are. So there are less females in graduate school pursuing PhDs, and then there are even less female faculty members. And so even getting a faculty job, I felt like that was just a really big moment for me, because I'm the first person in my family with a PhD. I'm the first person in my family who's tried to pursue this kind of career course in one of these jobs. And I also was really honestly crazy. And when I first decided I wanted to become a professor, I was like, man, wouldn't it be great if I could go to UAB because they have such a cool engineering school and a school of medicine? Yeah, that sounds awesome. I want to do that. And everybody I told that when I was a pre-doctoral student, I was like, yeah, I'd like to go work at UAB. Everyone said I was crazy for having that much of a specific target and goal. So I feel very, very lucky and honored that I'm now a part of this community.
I guess for me, when I realized that I've actually, I guess my greatest accomplishment, when I was finishing up at UAB, I always wanted to go into academia. I had older sisters, as I mentioned, three actually, that majored in engineering, and they co-opted while they were in college. And so I got a chance to see what they did on their jobs. And then I started my junior year, well, no, it was my sophomore year, started working in the research lab. And so for the professor I was working with, I saw, wow, he get to go all over the world and so he gets to teach and do research. So I really wanted to do that. And so I always knew going in that I wanted to go into academia. But I thought about going to an HBCU, Historically Black College or University, because I was thinking that, okay, I wanted to do outreach and make sure I could do what I can to increase the number of degrees that are in engineering that are awarded to students of color. And so I thought about that for a bit, and then the job came up at Alabama. And so I always wanted to end up somewhere in this state at a public institution. So It all hit home when I substituted for one of my colleagues for 1 week in one course. MK, you may remember it, MTE 271. At that point, all engineering majors took that course. It's like similar to the Introduction to Material Science and Engineering that's taught at UAB. And so I taught that course for just 1 week. And so metallurgical engineering was a really small program, but that class had like 100 students even, 20 years ago. And I taught 1 week for my colleague, who was a white male. He was out of town. And when I finished teaching that 1 week, a chemical engineering student, Black female, came up to me and she said, "Dr. Akoff, we need you here." And that was my confirmation that I made the right choice, to go to the University of Alabama, because I was thinking that I could hit the most right there was target for historically Black colleges, that you have your target audience of students of color. However, I didn't think about those students who would be a smaller number at a larger institution. And so that was the defining moment to me, that probably one of my greatest accomplishments personally, that I felt that I was really making a difference where I am.
Well, I'm not sure I have any specific defining moment to mention, but I've always felt like women, why wouldn't a woman want to go into engineering? It's so interesting. It's like working puzzles all day long. And it was fairly shocking when I did go to work. All the sort of weird male, just the interactions are just different. And I think we've come a long way getting to the point where we're all on equal footing. Not quite, but we're getting there. So I just felt like being part of SWE was a way for me to, get some energy from people surrounding me and keep me interested while I dealt with other stuff that wasn't quite so much fun.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next question. Kind of similar, but I'd still like for each of you to answer if possible. What are various ways women graduating with a degree in engineering can prepare to communicate and interact with peers in a male-dominated career field?
Well, that is one I feel very strongly about. I think the thing that was most important to me was getting it between my own two ears that I have something to contribute. And I would like to see all women come to that conclusion and not be afraid to say what's on your mind. And I think about all the times in engineering when you have to solve some problem, and men and women just deal with problem solving in different ways. And neither one of them is better than the other, but combined, you come up with a killer solution. It's just wonderful. So I want to see us get to the point where we don't even have to have this conversation anymore. We all work together and respect one another and get the job done.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Say Dr. Akoff, Dr. Sewell-Lofton?
Yeah, I could add some perspective for students that are on the call as how to adjust now. Sometimes, people tend to just, when you're putting lab groups together, you tend to get with people who look like you. And so, try to get in a group that has different perspectives. And maybe there are some people that you may know that are open and that will allow everyone to truly be a part of the lab. And as just starting those interactions very early on in college, I think that's a really good practice for when you get into the field working, because you're going to have to work together. As Jeannie said, you're going to work together. No one does solve any engineering problem on their own when you get into industry. So doing some of those things like that, I think that is best. Because I always would tell students, not only join SWE, also join the Society for Your Profession, ASME, ASCE, the Materials Advantage. So join that together with SWE, and that way you get the best of both worlds. You need to network still. And I think that's the best way to do it. Just continue to start your networking very early on during your college career.
That's good advice.
Dr. Sewell-Lofton, anything to add? Otherwise, I can move on to the next.
I think just real quick, the only thing that I've kind of seen time and time again that may be very specific and targeted is if you're in a group with somebody who, if it's you and another female in this male dominated field, or if it's an underrepresented minority in your lab group, help make sure that their voices are being heard. When we all lift each other up and when we all support each other, that's when some of the best work gets done. So if you notice that there's a quiet person, and I'll fully admit that when I was a student, I was very introverted and I worked hard, but I didn't necessarily talk to new people very much. And just reaching out to somebody and helping them find their own voice can help everyone be more successful.
Oh, good point.
Emma, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to input just a little bit. Having been on the faculty before retiring 50 years, had about 300 students over that period in all of the different disciplines, medicine, dentistry, engineering, and a number of the female students that worked with me that went on for PhDs were in the School of Engineering. Initially, the first one was Dr. Lucas, who subsequently then went on to be provost, and Dr. Baidez followed. But one of the students that I worked with and participated on our committee was the person we're honoring, Dr. Baswell. So I had the honor of participating on her master's committee, employing her off and on over maybe 25 years, and then being an ad hoc member of her PhD committee, and then being on her referral to her employment at Smith & Nephew, Richards in Memphis. So Dr. Baswell was a very unique, very special, very capable person, starting with very humble beginnings, continuing that attitude, but she was absolutely outstanding on a one-on-one participation activity. So when the students would come and see me, we would talk, and then they would go by her office on the end of the hall to find out what we talked about and the details. And she would fill in all of the details because she knew everyone in the system quite well. And was capable of explaining it in a way, one-on-one, that really was meritorious. So I appreciated her and her family very extensively. And I think it's absolutely wonderful that she's being honored.
Thank you for sharing that with us. All right.
I'd like to add a little bit more to what MK said about particularly answering this question about finding your voice. I find it that if you can kind of find your set of a cohort or group that of students that are more like you, SWE can give you that outlet, so they all are also majoring in engineering like you. So try to practice there, build up your confidence. And then when you get to a group where where they're mixed, you have men, women, and people from different backgrounds, then you have the confidence so you practice among some that, or I guess would say is a safe and comforting audience. But then that way, then you can build up your confidence when you get to a group where, where you won't be as afraid to have a little bit more confidence to speak up. So that would be my suggestion. When I was in grad school, one thing we did at UAB, we had students, we had the Black Graduate Student Association. And what we did, we met for lunch like every other week, and we would give presentations in front of each other. And it may be students from dentistry or from microbiology, from engineering, from chemistry and physics. And we all came together and we practiced, trying to, and then before we went and gave a big presentation in front of a really big group of all of our peers within our field. So that is a good way to kind of give you a place where you can practice amongst people who you feel very comfortable with, help build up your confidence, and that will help you a little bit more to be able to find your voice.
All right, thank you for that. I think Dr. Coffey might have answered my next question, but that's okay. My next question, and this will be the last one before we go into our Q&A. If you could go back and give 18 to 22-year-old you one piece of advice, what would that be?
I would really like to have had the experience of working in a group and practicing before I presented something to a larger group. Those kind of experiences, I think, are tremendously valuable. And I think we did that in SWE one year, where people who had something that they wanted to present took the opportunity to present it, and then the professional organization had members there who gave them critiques on their presentation. And that is a really helpful thing to do to build up your confidence and your capability.
Wonderful. Any other advice, Dr. Koff, Dr. Lofton, maybe Dr. Lemons?
You're muted, Dr. Lemons.
Unmute.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
Well, I apologize. Looking back, about half of the students, the 300 or so that I was on committees, were females. Medical school, dental school, engineering school, and a large number of the people coming through engineering that were females. I had the opportunity to be on their committee for their graduate work and advise undergraduate and teach at the undergraduate level. Looking back at it, I think what my advice today would be from my experience is think about the future and think about when you're going to retire, and think about those things that you need to do during your career to allow you to continue to be involved in any of the activities you would so desire. Because in my 5 years now of retirement, what I'm finding is that had I done several things that were opportunities that I could have done, it would make my retirement much better in terms of interacting and being involved with these societies and the profession. So my comment is think about the future as you're thinking about what you're doing now. And I see no reason why we should not be balanced in society, male, female, whatever. To me, it's never made a difference, and I have never found difference, although a number of the engineering faculty in the early days in the 60s were very opposed to the female students. I found that at the University of Florida also. we had one female in 500 engineering students when I went through engineering school. Now that changed very rapidly, but coming to UAB, I found the system was open, to the opportunity, but some of the faculty were biased, but those faculty have been gone a very long time. And if there's any bias on the faculty today, I don't recognize it. I think it's the opposite. We're pushing to the best possible, to balance where all sectors are represented appropriately, which I think is good for education for everyone.
Well, Dr. Lemons, I would like to invite you to be a part of ECOB, the Engineering Council of Birmingham. We do really good work. There are lots of engineering societies on the council. And what ECOB does is it promotes the activities that the individual societies cannot manage on their own. So it's a very good thing for the engineering societies and for the city of Birmingham and for the schools.
One thing I would like to add, that's what I would wish that I knew from my 18 to 22-year-old self, although it was seemed like it was a century ago, is that if I had just really realized how much everything I literally did at UAB prepared me for where I am today. Being in the societies, I was president of NSBE, I was president of SWE, I was vice president of, then it was, it's called Materials Advantage now, but now it was called the Joint ASM TMS chapter. I participated in research as an undergraduate. And so I got a chance to go to conferences as an undergraduate. Now I would have had a little bit better balance, because when I mentioned all those positions, at one point I ended up having them all at one time, but it was not planned. With that, I was vice president of NSBE while I was president of SWE, and then the president of NSBE graduated early, so I got moved up to that. But all those things that I did for that, writing the lab reports, giving the presentations for your senior design, presentations in class. I wish I had a better appreciation for all of those things that I did, and just realized how that is preparing me for where I am now. A good example, one of my students, my first Black female PhD student that I had, she hated to give presentations. And so when I had my research group, I always had them, they practice in front of the group, and then they had to go to a national conference to give a presentation. She hated it. She was interviewed by Intel. And guess what she had to do at the interview? She had to give a presentation. And she did it so well. And she got moved up very quickly into management. And I saw her, I was out in Arizona, and we had dinner. And she said, Dr. Akoff, she said, I hated doing presentations, but I'm just so glad that you stayed on me and made me do those, because she had no idea that she's going to have to do that on her job. And so they had to do presentations, like weekly presentations for their groups in industry. And so that was one thing I would tell my 18 to 22-year-old self, just think about the future. This is truly, you hear the expression, this builds character. It really does. It really does prepare you for your career, wherever you go, not just academia, but also in industry.
And it gets easier too. The more you do, the easier it gets.
Dr. Sue Lofton, anything to give 18 to 22-year-old you?
So I don't think I was quite as busy as Viola was when I was a student, but I did have quite a few extracurriculars, and I did undergraduate research as well. I think one of the things that I would tell myself if I could is don't believe that you have to do a co-op. I already knew I was kind of interested in more research related work, even if it wasn't necessarily academia. And there was this very strong push at Alabama, and it's a great program, but they're like, everyone needs to do a co-op. And so I spent a summer at a power plant. And while I met some very wonderful people, I learned a great deal about myself that I didn't need to be there, that I didn't need to be in industry. And I was so scared that I was not fulfilling some part of what somebody expected of me, that I was, not performing the way I needed to in some way. So I would tell myself and tell people going through it, like, if you know what you love doing, find a way to make that happen. And that's something important.
Thank you very much.
That's a really good point there, MK. I always tell students, even if you find out something you do that you don't like, that's a plus, because you don't
Absolutely.
want to go into something and be 30 years in a career or something that you hate. So you would know early on that you don't like it. Yes.
Yeah, it took just 2.5 months, and I was like, okay, we're done. Thank you.
All right, so that concludes our questions that we had generated for the panel. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the meeting back over to Christina Peters, and we'll go into the Q&A portion of the panel.
Thank you, Emma, and our esteemed panelists. We're now going to take questions. I've got a list that have been in the chat, and please feel free to continue entering your questions in the chat, because we still have plenty of time. So please keep entering your questions as you think of them. So the first question is, what will help young female engineers find their voice and get beyond the fear of speaking up?
I would say that group, SWE, particularly if you're a young woman in engineering, that would be a really good group to be with. I was fortunate to have in materials engineering at UAB, we tended to have a higher number of women in the field. So I actually had other, I think when I came along, there were maybe 3 other women in my discipline also. So, so you had a chance to have that actual bond there where you can actually practice and feel more confident. And I remember when I got up and gave my first presentation for Senior Design 1, everyone was like, "Oh wow, you did a great job for that." I had practice with my peers. Had an opportunity to speak in front of SWE as president, had a chance to speak in front of NSBE, and then also to practice with those groups. And that helped to build up my confidence. And then when I got into this big room where senior design, I don't know if they still do it that way at UAB. I mean, everyone could come to it. And for your presentation, you're just a student, you have all the professors there. It's quite intimidating. But if you at least feel confident, you're gonna always feel a little nervous. But you want to build up your confidence level. And I think that's one thing that I would advise that a young woman can do to help her find her voice.
Jeannie or Dr. Sewell-Lofton, any thoughts?
I think the getting involved with SWE so that you have a good solid support system behind you, and practicing with anyone that will give you some honest feedback will be very helpful.
I think the only other thing I can add is, now that I've been doing presentations a while and been going to meetings with people who are experts and people who are further in their careers than I am, realizing that everyone everywhere at every level makes mistakes or misspeaks, and not taking it personally when I do that myself. Like, nobody's going to think that I'm an idiot if I say the wrong protein name in a lab meeting I go to. I just correct myself and move on. And I don't need to like beat myself up and feel bad about it. I'm an expert in my field and I'm good at what I do. And I think particularly UAB the education here and the societies and everything that you're getting as a student is going to make you that kind of expert. So just trust yourself.
That's good advice.
Very good.
Our next question, is it easier to attract young women to emerging fields?
I think the key to getting women into these fields is early contact, early exposure. I mean, even, before middle school, so as early as they can, just the little things that, they can do that you can do to get them interested. When you're buying some toys, in addition to getting I don't know what's the current popular toy, but give them something that may be science background or engineering background also, to kind of balance it out along the way and exposing them to those things. There are so many different camps out now for all ages. And so I really think that early exposure and letting them know very early on, that makes a difference. And just seeing, try to do what we can in the positions we are, and actually just us being there and them seeing us makes a big difference. Perfect example, I have a nephew, he's in high school now, but when he was in the 5th grade, they had a project where they had to create a civilization. I mean, we didn't do stuff like that in the 5th grade. And so they had a discussion about, okay, what would they do for building, bridges and airplanes and so forth. So he told him, he said, well, I have an auntie, she's go all over the world and she worked with materials. So they didn't believe him. So they Googled me and then went to their teacher, said, hey, can we have her to come talk to our class? So their teacher contacted me. And so I went and spoke to the class. And so after I left, my nephew, the teacher contacted my nephew's mother and said that she had been trying to get the young girls to get involved and engaged. But when they saw me, after I left, they started saying, girl power, and they were more active. So just that little thing there, just a little thing, because my little nephew wanted me to come and talk to his class, and just them seeing me, and then they actually started to taking the lead. So just simply being there, that's one thing. It's our duty, once we get to our careers, whether you're in academia or in industry. I know the women at, I think it's Alabama Power, they had the ICANN, they work with the middle school girls. So very early exposure, that's the key. And then once they see how, engineering changes the world and enables us to do everything we do today, I think that's the biggest, I think that's key.
Any other thoughts from our other panelists?
I think Viola did a great job of summarizing that.
This question kind of piggybacks off of that. It's how do we encourage more women to pursue a master's or PhD in engineering? And I think this goes great with what you were saying earlier, Dr. Sue-Lofton. So any thoughts from our panelists on how to encourage that?
Well, scholarships are certainly helpful. And I'm not sure what else might encourage that. Do either one of you have suggestions?
I mean, I can speak as a young faculty member who just, semi-recently finished grad school. Particularly in the South, I think I could say this, there's kind of societal expectations that we get married and we have kids and we start our lives. And a lot of people joke that grad school is hitting a snooze button. You're delaying leaving college and you're slowing things down. And I think I was very lucky when I was a graduate student in that I had a young professor as my PI who was starting his own family. And so this idea that getting some kind of advanced degree is not incompatible with your non-professional goals is something really important to demonstrate to young women who might be interested in showing them that, you know, there are pathways forward in with masters and with PhDs, and there's industry, there's, you know, National Academy of Researches, there's academia, there's a lot of different options that I think some people just don't get exposed to, that's even a possibility.
And speaking for myself personally, like I said, I think I mentioned earlier, I had 3 older sisters who were in engineering by the time I started. So I knew about engineering, go to school 4 years, and you get a job. That's what I thought. But I was in my lab for the Materials 1 course, and the lab TA said, hey, Paula, you got a real knack for this. Go talk to my advisor across the hall. He's looking to hire an undergraduate researcher. I never knew that even existed. Didn't know that was a thing until just in lab, and I finished up early and went and just by happenstance got into research very early. And so I saw where I was working with graduate students. I saw they were going to class and doing research. And I saw I was going to more classes and doing research. And that's when I had the epiphany. I said, I can do this. And so, from that point on, I mean, I had never even thought about grad school. I had literally just like that semester or that term, at that time, UAB was on quarter, had just determined that I was going to be a materials engineer. And I was sitting inside the engineering council's office, and I was getting ready to let them know. I was reading a magazine about engineering disciplines and graduates, and I'm about to date myself. This was 1987. And I was reading an article in the waiting room, and it was about Blacks and PhDs in engineering. That year before, less than 0.5% of all the PhDs that were awarded that year went to African Americans. And I was sitting there and said, I said, I can do this. And I said, so I think, so prior to that, if I had not gotten that research experience, I would never even thought about grad school. And so that's why I always tell students to participate if you can do it. I did my research during the academic year. That you can also do their formal REUs, research experiences for undergraduates. Those are sponsored throughout the nation by the National Science Foundation. I think NIH does it, but a lot of the different agencies have those. And you stay on campus for a week, for the summer, about 10 to 12 weeks. They cover your housing, you receive a stipend, and you work on a research project. And so I strongly recommend that as students, if you think you want to do graduate studies, participate in undergraduate research. That would be my best advice to you, to see if you have a knack for it. And it's not like medical school or law school where you graduate with debt. You get paid to go to get a PhD, and you can attest to that. Can you? Yeah. So you get paid to go, and so my tuition was paid completely for me. I had it was called the UAB Presidential Fellowship at that time. I don't know what they call it now, but my tuition was paid, and then I received a nice stipend for my living expenses. So you get paid. So you will not graduate with debt if you get your PhD in engineering.
Great. Well, that seems to be all of our questions. And we've got just a few minutes until we hit the hour mark. So I wanted to fill you all in on a few things. Time has now come to a close. However, if you have questions we did not get to today or think of new questions, please contact me. Emma has put my email in the chat, and you'll also get an email from me following up from our event tonight. I've included it in the chat. As I said, a recording of this presentation will be provided within the next day or so. Thank you to each of our panelists, Dr. Sewell Lofton and Emma Schmidt, for today's Society of Women Engineers event promoting the Baswell Society, and to all of you for attending today's presentation. On behalf of the School of Engineering and Society of Women Engineers, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at upcoming events, which some of those are coming in the next few weeks. we're going to be doing a virtual event highlighting Project Lab. That will be coming up next month. I will be sure to send that out to everyone who's attended today. And then as far as mentorship opportunities, or if you want to find out more ways to contribute to Baswell Society, please contact me and I will put you in touch with the powers that be for that. So thank you all so much. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email myself, and have a great evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for doing this. I do appreciate it. Thank you for involving me.
Thank you.
Thank you to Jeannie and Viola for coming. Nice seeing you again, Viola.
Thank you, MK. Thank you.
Thank you.